Other side. India has called the act barbaric, inhuman and unacceptable and has demanded a probe by Islamabad. Pakistan has dismissed India's allegations as baseless and says it is ready for a probe provided it is within the ambit of the UN. Today in Public Forum, we discuss India's options to deal with this issue and whether the killings of the Indian Jawans will dent the Indo-Pak peace process. And to discuss the same, we have with us in our studios three distinguished guests. Please welcome Commodore Uday Bhaskar, a noted defence expert currently with the Society for Policy Studies. Welcome to Public Forum, Commodore Bhaskar. Sitting next to him is Ambassador Prabhat Shukla, a former diplomat currently with the Vivekanand Foundation. Welcome to Public Forum, Mr. Shukla. And we are also joined by Mr. Sriram Cholia, a Dean with Jindal School of International Affairs. Welcome to Public Forum, Mr. Cholia. And later in the program, we'll be joined by Pramit Pal Chaudhary, a foreign editor with the Hindustan Times. Commodore Bhaskar, I'd like to begin with you. We've seen the response from India. India has taken it up very strongly, with Pakistan saying this is barbaric, this is inhuman, this is unacceptable to us. And what Pakistan says, it says it is ready for a probe, but for one which is conducted within the ambit of the UN. How do you look at Pakistan's response? Clearly, it is in denial. They are denying any of this ever happened or that it is the handiwork of the Pakistan army. Is this on predictable lines, their response?
Yeah, I think those two words perhaps are operative, that on one hand you have a denial which has been almost inbuilt into the Pakistani response on any such incident. I mean, you just have to recall the last 10 to 14 years. If you begin with Kargil, the first official response from Kargil was that it has not happened.
Right.
And then if it did happen, the Pakistani state is not involved. And then you have further evidence to say that the Pakistan
acceptable to India. Ambassador Shukla, how do you look at Pakistan's response? As Commodore Bhaskar said, every time incidents of cross-border terrorism take place, or even in the case of 26/11, Pakistan denied it, and when it was established by evidence, they blamed it on non-state actors, and they said that they themselves were victims of terror.
Yeah, you know, I think as far as India-Pakistan relations are concerned, this is a pattern that you can trace right back to 1947. In 1947 too, they denied that they had anything to do with the raiders, and yet there is this noting by
basically.
Yes.
We shall talk about that in greater detail, but Mr. Cholia, how do you look at Pakistan's response? Pakistan basically saying none of this ever happened, saying that India violated the ceasefire to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, even before if you just turn back a bit, before the response, what is the motivation? Why are they doing this, in such cold-blooded, brutal fashion? This is something to be considered. I mean, this is against the laws of war. This is against laws of civilized conduct.
Right.
And our forces have never engaged in this sort of brutality. And, clearly we need to see the response is in many ways a cover-up for the fact that, extreme fundamentalist forces have been released on the border. You could call them, regular troops or irregular troops or allied, forces. The fact is that, it's happening in the background of firing across the border and in the context of repeated ceasefire violations that have been, on an uptick in the last few years. And all of this, so the question is, on one hand, you have the civilian side of the government that's making all these tall promises of a better future for us, inviting our Prime Minister. On the other hand, it also claims that the army is, on the side of a final settlement, while it clearly is visible. I mean,
Bhaskar, what Mr. Cholia is saying basically is that soldiers do often die in the line of duty, but it is the mutilation that is what is giving a different twist to this discussion altogether, a barbaric act.
No, absolutely. I think if you look at this in a larger intimacy of the use of force within a given framework, but there is also a moral dimension,
right,
which is now codified in what we largely call as the Geneva Convention and the conduct of war. There are principles of war in which it is to be conducted. That has clearly been flouted.
Right.
And this is where I think the Pakistani army has almost become a sui generis, a kind of standalone case study.
At this point, the government, of course, we know is under a lot of pressure because of this barbaric act and the mutilated condition in which the bodies of our soldiers were returned. On that note, we slip into a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. back to Public Forum. We are discussing the killing of two Indian jawans by Pakistani soldiers and how it is threatening to cast its shadow on the delicate relationship between India and Pakistan. Now in the program, we are joined by Mr. Pramit Pal Chaudhary, a foreign editor with the Hindustan Times. Welcome to Public Forum, Mr. Pal Chaudhary. I'll just come to you in a minute.
Sure.
I'd like Commodore Bhaskar to finish his point. Commodore Bhaskar, we were discussing before going into the break how such incidents do occur every now and then. Do you think this could be the handiwork of jihadists and not the Pakistan army?
You know, if we talk about the mutilation and the beheading of an Indian soldier and the fact that it was being taken back as a trophy, I was trying to draw attention to the fact that this is not new in terms of the conduct of the Pakistani army, because if you study that the rape of Baramulla is a very important kind of brutalization that the Pakistani army had engaged in. And I tried to study this a bit because, you know, professional armies are expected to conduct themselves in a certain way, and this is the British army, you know, which had then become India and Pakistan. And some of the commentary I read, why did the rape of Baramulla happen? And they attacked a convent, is they also invoke the religious factor, saying that the Islamic interpretation at the time expects that you will deal with the quote-unquote infidel, the non-believer, in such a way. And this was given as the rationale as to why they did what they did. Now from there, if you come to the present moment, we had a similar instance in Kargil.
Right.
Captain Kalia,
right,
and that whole, you know, episode of the way in which the bodies were treated. Now,
outrage in India. Mr. Pal Chaudhary, how do you look at Pakistan's response? They have rejected it as propaganda by the Indian army, and they are saying it's an attempt to basically draw attention away from the Indian incursion that took place on Sunday.
Well, as the Commodore mentioned, the debate is following two different tracks. In Pakistan, they're basically trying to argue that this is part of a normal tit-for-tat that happens on the LOC between the two armies. And today, of course, they're raising the issue that they're claiming one of their soldiers was killed by Indian gunfire. So they're going to say, basically, look, this is nothing unusual. We have this 50 times every year on the LOC. The Indian side is looking at the issue of the beheading and the physical intrusion across the LOC as saying that this is somewhat different from what we know.
This was an act of retaliation, or as Pakistan claims that perhaps this could be the handiwork of some jihadist elements and not the handiwork of Pakistan army.
Well, I think what we have been seeing in bits and pieces as the difference between.
Of course, in 1999, we know how Captain Saurabh Kalia's body returned badly mutilated. Ambassador Shukla, do you see it as a repeat of the 1999 incident? Do you see it was just a retaliation from Pakistan army, or you think it was a part of a larger strategy by Pakistan?
Well, frankly, it's early, so we don't have enough evidence to draw. But I am very open to the idea that this is, in fact, this is my view, that this is part.
The fact that it is entering a decisive phase now. Mr. Cholia, would you agree with Ambassador Shukla's assessment?
Sure, I mean, the two have always been connected. In fact, Pakistan.
Welcome back to Public Forum. We are discussing the killing of two Indian jawans by Pakistani soldiers and what should be India's response to deal with this. If you want to share your views on the subject we are discussing in Public Forum this evening, you can call us on our toll-free numbers at our 1-800-11-5313 and 1-800-11-5314. Mr. Pal Chaudhary, talking about India's options here, we know that we have lodged a protest officially with Pakistan. The High Commissioner was summoned yesterday, but as our Foreign Minister also said that we must not allow this issue to escalate. What then are India's options?
Well, I think as Ambassador Shukla mentioned, I think the core of this is part of a broader pattern of behavior. And what we have seen so far is that since the fall of Musharraf and the establishment of Kayani as the army chief, that both incidents on the LOC and in infiltration has increased gradually.
Welcome to the program, Santosh. What's your question?
Good evening, panel. My name is Santosh Kumar. I am an IFS aspirant. I want to ask question to Mr. Commodore Rudayvaskar. In the context of US-China, US-Pakistan relations warming up, and the US today is appeasing Pakistan in Afghanistan situation. So since ancient times we are facing the same problem in northwestern region of India, and we are strategically vulnerable. So if tomorrow the same incident repeats, what are our options from military to non-military terms, taking into context of Chinese presence in POK and miniaturized nuclear weapons of Pakistan?
Did you get the question, Commodore Bhaskar?
I think I have a sense of the question that Mr. Santosh was asking.
Okay,
saying what are the
Santosh.
options for India? Given the fact that there seems to be a greater kind of engagement between the United States and Pakistan after Abbottabad, and there's also
Caller from Kolkata, Prateek Pal, welcome to the program. What's your question?
Firstly, through the Lok Sabha TV, I would like to tell the Ministry of Defence that please give them awards to our brave sons of our country who had led their lives in the Kashmir. And secondly, I think the Pakistanis has playing with the Indian sentiments and with the Indian patience, because Pakistan has attacked in 1948, 1965, 71 and 1999. But till now India has not attacked Pakistan just like this way or any other way. So how India will fight with Pakistan, or how India will react?
Okay, you're talking about India's response here, Prateek Pal. Thanks for calling in. We got your question. Ambassador Shukla, I'd like you to take this question. There seems to be a division on what our Pakistan policy should be. Many believe that it has become a pet project of our Prime Minister. He's been fixated on Pakistan, which is why now there's a lot of public anger and anguish when it comes to this issue. And there are others who believe that since we cannot go to war with Pakistan, we must keep talking to them, and that's all we can do. We can complain when such incidents happen.
Right. Well, I'm glad you have elaborated on the question, and I'd like to address both the points. The first is what are our options? And to begin, what I'll say is, even in your question, there is this understanding that you either have war or you have appeasement. The fact appeasement is not going to work. I think that's one conclusion we must draw. It's
Pakistan. Thank you.
Or we lost the caller. It seems Cholia.
Sure. The first thing, obviously, politicization of terror, it happens not only in India, in the United States, elsewhere too. Have been bred for a long time. So it's a question of between their beefing up of two. It comes from that self-confidence that we were talking about earlier.
Mr. Pal Chaudhary also said our response at this juncture matters. How do you think India should respond?
Well, I think clearly there will be there is a military hotline on the border between the two sides. They exchange information and so on. They will. I mean, if you think about the forces on the ground in the harsh winter, clearly they will be itching for to pay back, and there is that we are always restrained by civilian leaders in India, unlike in their side where it's an army in the possession of a state.
Right.
We have a state which.
हमने जमीन से होने वाले हमले देखे, पानी से होने वाले हमले देखे, हवाई हमला अगर ये लोग करे तो क्या हमारे देश की स्थिति है, क्या वो भी सोचने की जरूरत है. थैंक्स टू लोकसभा टीवी.
Okay, Commodore Bhaskar, would you like to take that question?
अब पांचाल साहब, आपने जो सवाल पूछा है कि अगर हवा से कोई ऐसा खतरा आता है, संक्षेप में हम आपको यही बता दें कि भारत के पास इस वक्त काफी संपूर्ण सैनिक क्षमता है कि देश के लिए ऐसा कोई खतरा नहीं है. अगर कोई खतरा है तो मुंबई जैसे जो दहशतगर्दी से भारत के सामने आया है या भारत के लिए चुनौती है, तो इस वक्त हमको सतर्क रहना बहुत जरूरी है, पर इतना चिंताजनक होने की इस वक्त शायद संभावना नहीं है.
Right. Mr. Pal Chaudhary, many also believe that the fact that Pakistan is doing this with impunity, with a lot of brazenness, is because it believes India is not going to put an end to its dialogue with Pakistan. We have been engaging non-stop since Sharm el-Sheikh. Do you think it's time for us to relook our engagement with Pakistan?
Well, I think the engagement with Pakistan, the only thing that I would argue that in the
Sri Ram Cholia. That's it for now in this edition of Public Forum. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.